Good afternoon. It is Friday, October 24th, 2025. We are tracking strengthening Tropical Storm Melissa down here in the central Caribbean. It has not virtually moved at all over the last couple of days and is nearly stationary, with only relocations of the center making this very erratic in terms of motion, either moving a little bit to the east, a little bit to the north, to the west, or to the south. And that has been the case so far this afternoon, where the center has relocated further to the southeast than previous estimates. So anybody living in the island of Jamaica needs to be paying close attention to this system, as life-threatening to potentially catastrophic flooding and wind impacts are now possible. Here's a much closer zoomed-in view on the mesofloater satellite imagery on Tropical Storm Melissa, and we can clearly see that Melissa continues to organize at a much faster rate than what was realized yesterday, with now what appears to be a very organized CDO region, which means central dense overcast surrounding where the center might be hidden right underneath this area of very explosive deep convection at the moment, which means the system is currently getting much better organized. And one could even argue that the system is dealing with any vertical wind shear at all. Because when we look out off to the west of the system, you can see some of these cloud filaments here in the lower levels moving towards the west or towards the east. But as we get closer to this system, we can see those cloud filaments bend and get shunted to the south here, indicating that Melissa might be deflecting some of the vertical wind shear, which would otherwise keep the storm's tilt going and prevent the system from better organizing. That has not been the case so far, as what I can see here, with Melissa really deflecting that vertical wind shear away, and the system is able to develop a well-organized CDO. When we look at this also on the infrared satellite imagery, we can see how deep and explosive, vigorous the updrafts actually are, and the convective hot towers. Some of these are very, very violent. In fact, so violent that it is actually physically showing up here as a bit of a warm core that is trying to set up here, which indicates Melissa is producing very intense, vigorous updrafts and hot towers. In fact, in such a way that the low-level center might be getting tugged and yanked underneath all of this deeper convection. So we're not done seeing a relocation of the low-level center right now. And we can confirm this by looking at the latest Air Force mission that currently has departed the storm. So this is the latest that we have for you all this afternoon in this afternoon's update package. And we can see in their first fix, the pressure was about 1,002 millibars. It was at steady state for most of the morning, but in their last fix, they have had a pressure drop of a few millibars and now is down to 999 millibars, indicating that Melissa is in the early stages of rapid deepening this afternoon with this convective structure that we are currently seeing. And it would not be entirely surprising if this becomes even a hurricane late tonight, or even perhaps this afternoon or late afternoon. So now, with that being said, let's talk about the intensity guidance forecast on all of our hurricane models, including our Spegetti plot as well, because this is pretty concerning, and I'm starting to believe that this is going to be much stronger than what I first thought last night and yesterday. And here is clearly why we are seeing that. For one, the system is organizing slightly faster than what we first thought with that convective structure that I just showed you with that CDO. And secondly, the system is a little bit further southeast, so it's a little bit more away from these islands, and it could take a little bit longer before a landfall, or if a landfall occurs at all, near Jamaica or Cuba. So that means extra time over water that is extremely, extremely warm for this time of the year, very high upper ocean heat content, very light vertical wind shear, within also a very moist environment. And so I would not be surprised if this gets much stronger than what I'm currently forecasting right now. So with that, let's first take a look here at the HWRF model, which stands for Hurricane Weather Research Forecast. And when we look at this, the first thing I want to point out here is the initialization, because the initialization matters a whole lot on the future track of Melissa here from our hurricane model standpoint. And so on this model, the 12Z output, the system was initialized more over here, We're clearly not seeing that. And the system is more tugged or kind of barbated back in here, roughly about 15 degrees north in latitude by about 74 degrees west in longitude. So this means all the difference between, well, the system may be getting extremely close to Jamaica or the system barely missing Jamaica to the south here. And so that's what we got to keep in mind here is that the center relocations here are still being worked through the models this afternoon on the 12Z output from both the hurricane models and our deterministic models, which I will also show you once we get past our intensity part of this video. And so what ends up happening here is the system, for one thing, takes a little longer to intensify, which we're clearly seeing that the system is much stronger with winds now from the National Hurricane Center at 60 miles per hour. The winds are stronger than what this model is currently showing, which means that the system, the variability with the track here and both intensity remain uncertain for the time being, but we're beginning to figure this out a little bit more. So as we go into the overnight hours of Friday into Saturday here, we can see an inner core structure trying to develop here, and take note where Jamaica is here on your screen, just to the northwest of Melissa, with that hurricane force wind there being indicated. But this is a model that really takes its own sweet time to build up an inner core structure because, again, that recenter location or it not initializing properly. So we should see big corrections coming in for the 18Z and then again for the 0Z today. But this is what we have so far, and what this is still showing is a hurricane moving across the southern tip or the southern coast here of Jamaica near Kingston, Jamaica, in about 39 to 48 hours, which I think is a little too fast on this run, because I'll show you some other runs that clearly say that it's going to be moving a little slower. But then it rounds the western side of Jamaica here as a low-grade hurricane, which is certainly an outlier with what I'm about to show you. Pretty much all models here have this at a Category 4, or ensembles that is, and also maybe even a Category 5 hurricane, just to the west of Jamaica. But then eventually, once this departs Jamaica, the H-Wharf mysteriously wants this to strengthen pretty quickly with a pressure down to 937. So it goes from a Cat 1 to a Category 4 hurricane in nearly 12 to 24 hours, which is a distinct possibility. But I think it's going to be much stronger on approach to Jamaica than what the model is currently indicating right now. And this makes its crossing over Cuba in about 4 days. That's what we know for a fact between the day 4 to day 5 timeframe. The system is going to be over the eastern half of Cuba as a formidable hurricane, perhaps anything from a Category 2 to a Category 4 before it moves across the southern portion here of the Turks and Caicos Islands of the Bahamas, also perhaps at a low-grade major hurricane as well. So this is going to be a system that we're going to be tracking for a while, not just for a couple of days or so. Now, looking at the HMON model, again, the initialization is far different on this model too. So, if we go back here and look at a 15Z Friday, which is nearly a couple of hours ago, we can see the initialization here is really different. If we look at this run, the system is pretty much 16 north, right? If we go and look at the HMON or H-Wharf, it is slightly south of 16 north and a little bit further to the west. So you can see these differences here with the initialization, and that matters a whole lot again for the track. So what ends up happening is that the HMON initializes it probably a little bit better in this case, not by much, but a little bit goes a long way. And what we end up having here is a system that is much stronger and a little bit further to the south than what the H-Wharf is actually showing here. And so you can see this purple donut here indicating very intense hurricane force winds, with winds here in the inner core where the eye wall is that could approach Category 4 intensity with winds greater than 140 or 130 miles an hour. And then it stays offshore a little longer before making the turn to the north directly over Jamaica here. So remember when what we looked at on the H-Wharf had the system over here. The HMON is a little further to the east here, directly over the mountainous terrain of Jamaica. This would be as worst case of a scenario that you can possibly get in this type of a situation where the system is moving very slowly over the mountainous terrain here of Jamaica. And this would certainly bring catastrophic flooding, catastrophic damaging winds, perhaps waterspouts and tornadoes to the eastern quadrant here, where we have this very intense upslope flow over the mountainous terrain here of Jamaica near Kingston. And this is where we have a lot of cameras that I will be using during one of my live stream sessions in a couple of days or so, once this gets close enough to making possibly a landfall in Jamaica. But this would be really, really bad for Jamaica in itself, with catastrophic flooding due to heavy rainfall, storm surge flooding as well, landslides, rock slides, just about everything you can get from a major hurricane. And this moves over the Cuban Strait eventually and then crosses into the Turks and Caicos Islands at a much weaker hurricane than what the H-WRF currently is predicting. Now, there's a couple of other models that I wanted to show you here. Is the HAVS A as well, which has not done a horrible job with this system and seems to initialize the system a little bit further to the south than what we're seeing right now. And again, it's all about that initialization, folks, that makes a huge difference in all of this until we get a more coherent, well-stable vortex where it becomes vertically aligned. The models are not going to handle this quite well just yet. And so we're not done seeing shifts to the north, to the west, to the south, towards the east right now. This is moving around just a little bit. And until, again, we get that vertically aligned vortex that's more stable, we're not done seeing shifts in the model guidance from any of our hurricane models. So please take this with a grain of salt. But what this model does indicate is pretty much with what we're seeing right now, and this meets reality quite well with what we're seeing. So if we look again at the satellite presentation, we can see that CDO well formed here, and it makes perfect logical sense that the pressure it's not this low, 980 millibars. I think it's definitely a lot higher, but it does a bit of a better job at indicating the overall wind field with the system, and perhaps maybe an inner core structure with hurricane force winds developing very quickly tonight. And so the system now is 999 millibars, gets down to 970 millibars by tonight. Then by Saturday morning, Saturday morning, early afternoon, this system really takes off in a hurry and drops down to 959 millibars in about 33 hours. So by Saturday afternoon and evening, we have a bona fide hurricane here, perhaps with pressures that are very low. And this continues to intensify at an explosive rate here. By Sunday morning, we have a system with pressures down to 935 with winds at around 130 miles an hour. And this gets even stronger, possibly a category 5 here with pressures now down to 927. And this gets even deeper. It does not let go very much. And this gets it all the way down to 902 millibars. So that equates to a category 5 easily, without a doubt here. Even so, category 5 force winds are not being indicated on this model just because the simulated forecast here calls for an IWL replacement cycle, which are very hard to predict even on a model like this. But this indicates a very, very, very intense, violent inner core structure on Melissa. And then look what happens. This goes right over over Jamaica. Sorry about that. And this would be as worst case of a scenario that you can possibly get. And I do not like to overdo things very much. But if this actually comes to pass, this would be full devastation, especially along the coast here of Jamaica, like Kingston. This would be utterly bad by all circumstances, from a flood perspective to a landslide perspective to a coastal flood perspective. This would be just about as bad as it is physically possible on a really tall mountainous terrain island here. With that orographic flow, that would really be bad. And then it moves into far eastern Cuba in about, say, 4.5 days, and then moves over the Turks and Caicos Islands, perhaps at a hurricane here. And this seems a little bit more likely here with this scenario than what the H-WRF was showing. Now, one more model that I wanted to show you here is the HAVS B. We're just going to kind of move through this rather quickly. And this model has a system about as intense, not as deep as a HAVS A, but still very strong here regardless. It won't really matter of how deep the low pressure actually gets, because there's going to be a lot of catastrophic flooding on this. And this, again, takes it right over Jamaica in about 90 hours. So we're looking at pretty much late Monday into Tuesday morning with catastrophic impacts at this point. But this has been moving around here, and just to show you each run by the HAVS A model at this given time, 93 hours out for Tuesday early morning, we can see that it's making its approach, landfalling over pretty much central Jamaica. If we look at the prior model run, it was much further to the south. The run before that, it was north of Jamaica. And the run before that, from yesterday at 18Z, it was much further to the east here, closer to Hispaniola. So we are not done seeing changes in the track guidance with this system right now. But based on the 12Z model, this is really bad for Jamaica for sure. And because of this, I am a bit more confident to say that Melissa will become a Category 4. Unfortunately, I really like to stay conservative with my forecast, but unfortunately, that's not really the case in this forecast package this afternoon on your Friday. And so my latest intensity forecast has been nudged upward from the previous one and is about, I would say it's pretty much right below the National Hurricane Centers right now at the well below the National Hurricane Centers. They're forecasting a 150 mile an hour system. I'm only forecasting a 130 to 135 mile an hour system. So once again, this is my track or my intensity forecast with Melissa, predicting a low grade Category 4 hurricane in about 3 to 4 to even 5 days, while the hurricane models are much higher in the higher echelon of a Category 4 hurricane. So now that we talked about our intensity forecast with Melissa, it's also a good idea that we really dive very deep into the track guidance forecast, because this remains a very complicated track forecast with Melissa over the next 5 days. And the thing that we've been talking about in prior videos, including live streams, is the very complex steering pattern that Melissa is in right now. For one thing, we have this strong deep layer ridge to the west of Melissa over the Gulf and over the Florida Straits. We have this high pressure system that I've been talking about even in this morning's video over the Leeward and Windward Islands of the Eastern Caribbean, the Greater and Lesser Antilles. And this trough is already moving out, helping to build this ridge northward over the Gulf and over the Florida Straits. So what ends up happening is Melissa is mired underneath this overall very, very weak steering pattern here, where you have southerly flow here, okay, and we have northeasterly flow doing this. So we have competing steering patterns that are fighting against each other. This part of the river of southerly flow wants to yank Melissa northward towards Hispaniola, but the other side of the flow from this other ridge of high pressure over the Gulf wants to shove Melissa further to the west and south. And so because of this, we have had erratic storm motions throughout the last 24 hours, some of them moving to the north, to the west, to the south, and to the east. And we are still seeing that this afternoon, all because there is really nowhere for this system to go at the present time. Will that change? Well, right now, the latest European model continues to insist that the ridge, this primary ridge right here over the Gulf, will take the most control over where Melissa goes versus the ridge over here over the Eastern Caribbean. And you can see that here on the forecast. So as we go to Saturday morning, we can see this trough leaves the scene up here, leaving a break between two troughs and leaving and allowing this ridge to nose in to the north of the system. And so you can see the 588 height contour here highlighted well on the European model. And this is helping to keep Melissa mired underneath this ridge axis that is currently oriented from west to east over the Florida Straits and over the Bahamas. Okay, and this ridge here is not as strong as prior models indicated, so that's why Melissa really feels the influence of this ridge to the north. And so as we go forward here into Saturday night into Sunday, we can see that this ridge moves. So this is going to be a very quick mover type of ridge pattern, where this is not going to stay up here for very long because, well, we could all say thank you to this trough of lower pressure that is going to be moving into the Midwest and the high plains, producing a severe weather event up there. And so what that's going to do again is it's going to erode and allow this ridge to move continuously eastward as Melissa moves westward at this time. And so you'll see the steering pattern change here. So right now, easterly flow guiding the storm westward in 57 hours here will soon change as we go into day 4. So now what we have here is a trough basically a short wave approaching the southeastern U.S. You can see flow here out of the northwest, rounding that trough with flow out of the southwest here. Here's that ridge that was to the north of Melissa, now to the northeast, with another ridge trying to build in here. But because of such weakness here with this trough, there will be a lane of escape here for the system. So the system is here, drifts a little bit to the west, and then will make this turn eventually to the northeast because this trough is also evolving. And you'll see this trough gets deep enough eventually in future cast models here that the system will be able to feel that tug, and the system will be able to move out to the northeast with background southwesterly flow underneath the system, helping to guide the system generally northeastward. Now, on the GFS model, there has also been some corrections made, all right, over the last 4 model runs, and I'll show you that here right now. So as we go to, let's just simply go to 0. Yeah, let's go to here, 48 hours out. And so you can see here clearly on the 12Z forecast, again, there's that ridge that we talked about. It is still being sampled a little weaker, though, than what the European deterministic forecast is indicating, and that makes a difference. That's why the GFS is a little further to the east than the European deterministic forecast, okay? And you'll see that here. So as we go to the past several model runs, you can see that there has been some notable corrections with the GFS. I mean, yesterday, a day and a half ago, we were talking about our system literally over here. We have since seen corrections further to the west now. So now it looks like the westward solution is more likely to pan out this time. I don't think this is going into Hispaniola, which would prevent this system from getting any stronger in this case. But unfortunately, the system's going to spend a lot more time over the very warm, unusually warm waters of the Caribbean. And that means the system is going to get stronger because of the pattern that this is exhibiting. And also one other thing that I want to point out here too, this trough, there's a little bit of a tut here that's not grabbing Melissa as much. And so that's what makes all the difference in these model runs recently from the GFS. That for one thing, it realizes that the system, right now it's becoming better vertically aligned, but it realizes that the system is a little further to the south and to the west than what previous estimates were. So that's why we're also seeing corrections on that model as well, which is helpful in this case because we can actually rely on the more westward guidance at this time instead of secondhand guessing, is this going to go this way or this way? All of the models pretty much now are to the south of Jamaica and then eventually towards the west of Jamaica, as you can see here on the Spegetti plot. And please do not use this map to make decisions. Please seek official info from the National Hurricane Center, okay? That's what I want to tell you because we're not done seeing these shifts. We could still see this going to the east of Jamaica or to the west of Jamaica. We are not 100% certain about this forecast yet, but we do know that a drift generally to the west is expected here in the next few days or so to the south of Jamaica. We can see this here too on the FNV3, which is the Google DeepMind AI model, the GEDMI, also correcting to a landfall directly over Jamaica. This would be really devastating because all of these pink tracks here indicate category 4 to even category 5 intensity. Okay, I want to repeat that. Category 4 to category 5 intensity. Anything in pink here is major hurricane strength or greater. Okay, and pretty much all of the members here are on top of Jamaica, meaning that this could still pass to the east or right in the eastern tip of Jamaica or pass across the western tip of Jamaica. But we have seen a narrowing with this, and it's really unfortunately headed right towards Jamaica. So anyone living in Jamaica right now, at this very time, you need to get prepared for catastrophic impacts. You literally do. I am not saying that very lightly in today's update. So now when we take a look at the ensemble from the Euro, very much uncertainty here still because, again, location changes and center relocations. And so we're not done again seeing shifts here. The GDMI has been also moving over all over the place just a little bit. And so again, this still has a chance of moving to the west of Jamaica or to the east of Jamaica just by a hair. Looking at the generational AI model also indicating, again, a more westward solution into western Jamaica at this time in the next 3 to 4 days or so before it makes its crossing into eastern Cuba in about 5 or so days. Looking at the GEFS ensemble, the ensemble here hasn't changed a whole lot with still some solutions pretty much very close to Hispaniola with some other solutions pretty far to the west over the Cayman Islands. I will just make it clear here, anything into the Cayman Islands does not look as likely in this type of situation right now than what we were thinking just a few days ago, just because of where our system is currently and how the steering patterns are interacting with each other. But still prepare for near tropical storm force winds on the Cayman Islands with some light to moderate rainfall coming in out of the northerly direction as Melissa rounds out the western portion there of Jamaica. This is the latest official forecast from the National Hurricane Center highlighting winds of 60 miles an hour. So again, we have had a big bump in intensity just recently due to the CDO becoming better organized. This is on its way of becoming a formidable hurricane, possibly a Category 5 hurricane as it nears Jamaica. So anybody in Jamaica right now, you need to have all preparations completed as soon as possible here because this is looking quite the storm for you with hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings there. There are still hurricane watches and hurricane or tropical storm warnings out for the Haitian Peninsula due to the fact that the system could still get a little too close to Hispaniola, but a solution in that direction does not look as likely as what we thought a couple of days ago. A solution more towards the west here is holding true in today's update. So now the chances of tropical storm force winds have unfortunately been risen across Jamaica right now with a 70 to 80% chance of tropical storm force winds arriving as early as Saturday night into Sunday, Saturday morning into Saturday night. Excuse me there. Sorry about that. Really hard to see this when they're all bundled up against each other. And so again, now is the time to get prepared. All right, make sure your windows are boarded up, things are secure, because this is going to be a rough one for Jamaica, unfortunately. When we take a look at the key messages here very quickly, as far as just how bad this could actually get. So the first point that I want to make here is due to Melissa's slow motion, the risk of a prolonged multi-day period of potentially damaging winds, very heavy rainfall resulting in life-threatening to perhaps catastrophic flooding and numerous landslides and storm surge conditions continues to increase for Jamaica. Preparations to protect your life and property should be rushed to completion immediately, since strong winds and flooding rains could begin in Jamaica on Saturday or Sunday. For Haiti, heavy rainfall will result in catastrophic flash flooding, landslides across southwestern Haiti into early next week. Extensive damage to roads and buildings are expected, potentially isolating communities for an extended period of time. This is a life-threatening situation, and immediate preparations to protect your life and property need to be taken. Strong winds could also potentially last for a day or more over the Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti. The remainder of Hispaniola and eastern Cuba, heavy rainfall could also produce significant life-threatening flash flooding and numerous landslides in the southern Dominican Republic. Interests in Cuba should monitor the progress of Melissa, since the risk of heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and storm surge appears to be increasing. Here's a look at the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center on how much rainfall you could actually see over the next 72 hours or 3 days into the future. This is not a full 5-day forecast, all right? So just because that this part of Jamaica doesn't look to have a whole lot of rain, that this is only a 3-day forecast. And I'll tell you what, this is as serious as it gets. We are looking at about 2 feet of rainfall potentially over the Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti here, the Haitian Peninsula that is also. This would be as devastating as it is physically possible for that area. And also for eastern Jamaica, we're looking at about 16 inches, possibly even 20 inches of rainfall, almost 2 feet of rainfall in a 3-day period. That's about a foot of rainfall almost per day on average for that location. And so anyone, again, living in this entire area, don't worry so much about the wind right now as for the flooding, because the rainfall is going to certainly outweigh the wind for the time being. But of course, damaging winds can be expected with this type of system, regardless of how much rain it actually produces. Now, with that being said, because of the quickly evolving situation on Tropical Storm Melissa, I will be live streaming tonight at around 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That will be 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, all right? Again, I will be streaming on this live tonight, doing a live discussion for a couple of hours on Tropical Storm Melissa as it undergoes a rapid organization. Does appear to undergo the beginnings or the early stages of rapid intensification here shortly. So we will be updating you all on that tonight. But you can only do that, or you can only get that information if you do subscribe to the channel, if you haven't already, and enable all notifications for the YouTube channel as well to get up-to-date daily updates on Tropical Storm Melissa, as this is going to be a catastrophic, possibly a unsurvivable situation unfolding for Jamaica. All preparations right now need to be rushed to completion. And I'll see you back here tonight with another live stream discussion on Tropical Storm Melissa.